And thanks everybody for coming. This is something that's been kind of boiling up in our practice for a year and a bit, being something that I suppose has got deeper roots for all of us, a kind of frustration with the fact that design doesn't really have much impact on the housing that's been built. And this government doesn't seem to be very interested in looking at a lot of simultaneous alternatives to that. And that means that we are basically, we've got a huge gap between aspiration, not just among architects, but people's interest in how they live and what's on offer. So that kind of gap is, you can feel it in government because as the reports get more and more beautifully written, with the design codes looking more and more kind of complete and exciting, the way that the delivery is working is that it's all about slashing costs and making isolated estates. So if you just bear with me, it's actually quite complicated, this whole landscape, and when you're trying to do a talk, you can got lots of rabbit holes and get very confused. But I would argue that at its heart, it's an incredibly simple thing that's wrong. It's basically that we've got this psychological default aspiration to have a house which is ours all the way down to Australia and up to heaven. And this is everything else in our lives is working towards this nirvana. And actually, when you get there, there's something completely soulless about it. So what we have to understand, I think, is why people buy these things. Why did they do it? All over kind of like social media, you see people saying, well, my mum bought one and I don't know, it's pretty crap, but now I've bought one and my friends bought one and somebody else I know bought one because they needed a dog and da-da-da. And it sort of feels like it's just somewhere that you go, but there's not a lot of excitement or passion in why that happens. So I would argue that this is not as secure an investment as the house builders would like it to be. There is an inherent problem in that fashions do come and go. And although this one's been holding on for the last 30 years, it is only a short period of time since we kind of, all the SMEs stopped building homes. I think it's about 9% now, used to be 40. And these kind of, a bit like the big supermarkets, the house builders have come in and it's very entrenched in government in the same way that oil and gas is, seems never to be able to be a stranded asset either, because it's too built into the American model, and we follow the American model and so on. So if it's looking more and more fake, if it looks a bit humorless, you know, there's no wit in these things. And if when you live there, you feel like you're just being stored, that is it. You know, you've been put. That eventually gets out. I do feel that you know, this life cannot be forever sold. And when you talk to young people, they do have all sorts of ideas about why they're not livable places, and it's mainly to do with disconnection. And just on our fingertips, we could be building these, and it's not very different. And in fact, these homes are like twice the height and have twice the amount of joy in them. And it's all to do with dropping the closely boarded fences, building more densely, and crucially building in the right place. So it feels that there's so many constraints now when facing the climate challenges that we really need to think about what constraints can we drop, which ones are bogus and have no meaning really, and particularly as architects and planners and professionals, do we really need to stand behind a density table and say, yes, this is the appropriate this and that's the appropriate that, when in fact, why, oops, sorry, I've gone, I tried to use this button at the end, but why wouldn't any of these more dense kind of Casbah-like villagey places be very appropriate when you want to build outside a village in the UK and you want to keep young people in that village? It doesn't make sense. And so what we're proposing is something which is where an alternative to sprawl, where everybody gets their own front door. So we do 100% net to gross, and there is a sense that people have that thing that they want, but they've also got a chance to share things. So I'm hoping to go through that. So this is something we've been doing in our studio, and Anna Rose, who's here, has been involved, and Jeremy, who's here, has been involved. And basically, we've developed some brushes on the iPad which allow us to do master planning really fast, and we call it Stamp the Twins, because that has full form for the twins. And just if you get it to the right scale and you go up or down, the garden's on the right side. Not just the capacity, but a lot of things about connections to existing neighbourhoods and how to make landscape work. So I wanted to show you two things that we've built, which maybe give me the confidence that this is possible. I mean, Lucy was very nice, but I'm no kind of amazing expert at regeneration. But we have had some successes in that we've built places people really like to live. And that does give you a feedback loop and some confidence that the things we did there make sense. And for profitable neighbourhoods, I would say that we've learned a few things. We've learned that the twists and turns and the irrational geometries actually are a bonus. We don't need to worry about keeping lines straight, worrying about topography. That sometimes, in order to do something, you might be a bit more like a magpie and use two systems because the two systems make sense rather than using one system. I just pulled this slide because those are stakes in the ground and those are cassettes, and they both do the job of making a place which is super plant friendly and able to be, embed itself into the landscape. When you look at these plans, what you might notice is these really kind of like quite tiny gardens. But the gardens are part of a larger landscape which opens towards the south, the southwest, and the southeast, and the river. So it was interesting to us. How much privacy do people really need, and how much did they want to share? And we found that the opening these gardens out to what will become more and more rampant with the trees growing and the suds really works in terms of like keeping everything rooted to the river and part of a landscape. So I just wanted to show you that tiny little bits of commerce we also found was really useful, that people just really would like to support, 10 square meters of space. That's Mario D, an Italian shop. This is a very popular bakery called Northern Rye, and some days you get really long queues, like literally going around the block to buy the first loaves. And that tiny space was bought by a resident who was just fed up of it being closed. He just bought two of the units, and one's a gallery and one's this bakery, which is really good. Right, just finally, the geometric things that we learned were that, as I said before, that slight curves and also splays are really useful when you're doing housing, because it allows you to have a changing relationship between two terraces, And whilst that they're very, very close at times, because they're moving away from each other, we were able to persuade the planners that that wasn't a window-to-window distance that they couldn't accept. And at the other end, do you see how they're kind of like jostling together and actually pinching? And that was another kind of tactic, if you like. And then finally, these ones at the end, they could be entered from two sides and at different levels. Well, that gives you another typology. Obviously, you're not going to be stupid and just stick with your one typology when there's an opportunity to do something much cleverer. So it's just not being too dogmatic. However, we do love the twins because the twins have this really delightful way of giving people on the lower floors, the house, it's an upper house and a lower house, if you like. And the lower house, it has a garden, a front garden, and it's classic. The upper house has a big terrace. And so you walk up 2 stories and their bedrooms, and then you go up to the top, and that's your living floor, which is something people love. They love being up high and looking down and having a terrace. And because the next house, that top unit toggles, so it swings through 180 degrees, there's total privacy on each of those terraces. And it just kind of like saves a lot of CO2, 250 kilos square metre, and because you're sharing heat with people. And here it is on the website. We say it's a proven formula because all through London, you see these maisonettes. The only difference here is we're giving people front doors to the street as opposed to going into a little lobby, but everybody shares houses. And up in Newcastle, there's the Tyneside flat right the way through Durham and Sunderland. So it's a very proven typology. Okay, so that's all really cute. We've got the kind of the shapes, we've got the ambition for greening and for conviviality, if you like. But it's absolutely useless if it's not in the right place. So we took 2 places, and we wanted to look at how profitable neighbourhoods could better the house builders in these 2 places. So I'm going to take you up to Seaham. I don't know if anybody knows Seaham, but it's actually, the more we looked into it, the more we thought, wow, it's the same with every place you look at. When you really delve into it, it's amazing what places can be. So the reason we've got this map with the little dots on it is that Homes England, who took all of the land from the regional development agencies and have become like the caretaker of public land, not all of it, because there's MOD and there's a few other scraps, but a lot of it. And you could, in theory, you can go and find sites here. And sometimes you go and find the site and it's actually been built on already, or it turns out it's a school playground or something. But mostly, it's a good starting point. So this on the hub, they tell you what the capacity of this site is. So they say 177 homes on that site, which is just 26 homes a hectare, which we think is like, immorally, very immoral as a quantum of housing on scarce land. So we wanted to pilot this high density of 70 homes. So we just wanted to check that it's in a sustainable location. So it's 10 minutes from the station. It's walking down a high street. There's another high street down here. There's quite fantastic beaches. And on that very site, there was this colliery, brickworks, incredible structures. Most of that's been erased, but there are some buildings left, which were the miners' hall and lots of different Methodist churches of different denominations. So right next door is a secondary school. That's very handy. There's like about 4 different primary schools around there. There's like 2 really large local allotments. You think that one's big. There's a huge one here that goes almost down to the floor. And we found makers of working in churches. There's lots of hidden culture there too. And there's this coastline that you can walk to sort of half an hour. It's pretty cool too. Right, but we've got competition from a house builder who is building, it's Taylor Wimpey, helped with Pegasus, and they are building something called Siam Garden Village of 15,000 homes, and 1,500 homes, sorry. And it's an hour to the station, basically. So, but it's a fresh way of living, they say so. It's this fantasy of a new start and a territory, tabula rasa, free of complexity. But the reality is it's too much tarmac and TMT. And the other competition is interesting, actually. It's from Rightmove. Lots and lots of homes are available in the Siam, quite near the station, for under 250. And, you know, some of them a lot less, 100, some that are kind of in really bad state, you pick up for about 50K. So sometimes these ones are not actually on the market. People love these. But you can see that it would be really fun to retrofit these homes, maybe insulate them from the outside, plant a few trees, create a bit of a play street there, maybe working with everybody. And that's just across the road. We thought, if we did this really well, we could do our 106 and SIL money to take the retrofit into the rest of the town. I won't go into this in great detail, but through the middle, there is a road which you can drive along, but every so often you have to drive around a tree. You can also drive around all of these spaces here, but you can't drive in there. So we've got two different types of streets as a starting point when we're designing with the twins. And one is this kind of what we call the belly, with a pinch point at the front, then a bigger area in the middle with a forest, a bit of place for cars and bikes and a bit of play and a bit of woodland. Funny little lanes which come through, which would take you through to what we're calling the bow ties, just because that's the shape of them. But they're kind of like, sometimes these are wide enough to put a building at the end. Anyway, we played with this belly and bow tie in quite an extreme way on this site, and we like the way that it allowed you to kind of wander through and connect a lot of the different communities here. Right, we've the way that we've taken the affordable housing is just to do some for the sizes. We've made some cheaper homes which we hope that a housing association will pick up, or that some other kind of structure can be made so that those can be, we can do our affordable housing in a really nice mixed up tenure blind way. And the overall, if we're taking the construction costs at a slightly ambitious level of £2,100 a square metre, but not impossible. Like people we've been talking to say, yes, the house builders are doing it at 800, and then with a few on costs, it maybe gets to 1,500. But this up in Siam probably is possible if you're buying all the same windows and you're doing it at scale. Anyway, you get to the sales revenue are coming out from looking at Rightmove and things to being about 200 million. Then the construction costs 135 million. And if you take away some of these other costs like borrowing money and paying a few architects, and actually quite a mean contingency. Anyway, it's a bit rough and ready. You would get to a total profit of £24 million, which that's quite a lot of money, actually. You should be able to do some things with that. But there's other things. that's just the start. If you really start taking a holistic view of what finance really means, then you need to think about what the NHS is paying for taking district nurses out to, do dressings twice a day in a house builder community. And I'll let you just read through this because it's a bit of just thinking about the social streets, creating more of a resilient network of people who can care for themselves, the active living savings, but also if you look at the annually what it costs to run a car and what that costs in terms of carbon, you are, if you do this with the ESG hat on, it's actually meaningful, all of this. And I just sort of thought I'd show this because as the terraces come to the middle of that plan, you have something which is memorable, a series of corners which are stacking up on each other. And these social spaces, they're open to having social enterprise and small commerce. And even though these twins are a typology, which is a standard typology, the actual landscape and the way that people live together and the way that they make these spaces can be co-designed and evolve. So down in Dover, it's an incredible site actually. This is Dover Castle, and this is a fort with barracks that have become available. And there they think you can get 286 homes, but we think you can get 1,000 homes. It's really, there's a little walk through here, which means that it's probably 20 minutes to the station. And again, quite a lot of homes that are affordable in Dover. It's really interesting, and that's something which, makes me think that doing a project like this could become like a regeneration project for the whole town if you started thinking about making homes, new homes, and retrofitting older homes. So there is the really interesting shapes, and of course we wanted to respond to these and to the opportunities that at the top of the barracks. You see all of these arches and incredible structures that you could imagine being a kind of ready-made for festivals and for small commerce and events. So this is what's been planned. This has outline planning approved for 300 homes. It feels like a big waste of the site to me. It kind of works in terms of getting emergency vehicles around, and that's about it. So what we did is we're trying to get some sort of dynamic set of routes and streets, taking people who might be, walking on the cliffs of Dover and want to have heard about this on Instagram, want to have another experience. So they're being drawn up the hill to the fort through some of these belly streets, and all of these gardens, these bow tie shaped gardens are also completely publicly accessible. So there is no closely boarded fences, everything is open. And that gives us 72 homes a hectare. And that's what it looks like. And we think this would be just totally amazing. So there's another, I think Beth, who did this, should really come up and talk it through. I feel a bit back-footed, but anyway. The total construction cost is 200 million, and the additional costs are 66 million, and the total profit is getting on for £60 million. So within that, I'm sure that there's some costs of borrowing, and there'd be phasing, and there'd be things to to, I'm sure we'll get some questions from Jeremy and other people on this. But again, there is, this is part of a bigger picture of cost. So I just wanted to finish showing a project that we've been involved in Lewis, which has got really high aspirations to be a profitable neighbourhood. And it is really, as you can see, hugger-mugger and completely tethered to the town centre. So it really ticks all of the location boxes. It's like crazy the way that how picturesque the different periods of architecture are when they mound up against each other in this kind of collage. But this site is super flat, and this was it in 2000, completely flooded. So what human nature, the developers are doing with a lot of clever engineers and flood experts is creating a river wall, a flood defence which wraps around here but allows, been negotiated with the Environment Agency, so there's areas for flooding too. And it's all, as anybody who's been involved in this knows, it's quite a tit for tat. But this is the first phase, which has got detailed planning permission, and it's all completely built into the flood wall so that when you come out onto your balcony, it's at the right level, and that is just here. So that's our project, 44 homes. And we had a great deal of trouble convincing the South Downs National Park, who are the planning authority there, that what we were doing was not overdevelopment and too aggressive, too high. I mean, to be honest, they don't really like architecture too much. So we tried to show that it was really covered up with trees as much as possible. But these 4-storey houses, they're sort of like set back at the top story. So when you're walking along, it feels like 3 stories. And then there's the bridge house at the end, which holds the corner. Our argument was basically that towns always had town walls, and that they often got denser towards the edge of a town. And this new model where everything has to kind of peter out isn't the way to make fabulous places. So inside, you know, there's more flooding because there's the water table comes up, so there's a kind of whole suds demand there, which takes up most of this courtyard. But we wove that into the story, and you've got 44 homes, and there's a density of 85 homes a hectare, which is a good density. And along with that, you've got lots of other really ambitious things that other people in the audience know about, but that's our site. That's the plan of it, with this kind of sunken area in the middle, and everywhere people are negotiating contested boundaries with each other, and that's what makes for a really interesting place. Some elevations. This is something that we worked through with, there was a design group set up by Human Nature, and it was people of quite a few different ages, but mostly quite experienced, who came along and discussed colour and texture and design with us, which was great. So there's a place for people to get involved in decoration and creating sculpture and landscape on every side of this. And that's the suds pit, and people chatting outside their doorways. And tiny bits of commerce, a bit like in the Ousburn, you know, just 6 or 7 square meters makes a big difference if you can meet there and run a homework club. So we say, like, take your time back, live in a profitable neighbourhood, don't sit in cars, and that's the way to make the neighbourhoods work. Lewis has taught us about collective effort. I think that regenerative thinking is coming up the agenda, and it's really nice to think about more local investment going into these places, and I'd love to hear what you all think about density and where we should head.
And overcoming the notion that higher density is only something that you have in big metropolitan areas, whereas you've speculated on, you know, Durham and Dover, neither of which are metropolitan areas. So, I mean, your work is just provokes so many fascinating questions.
I mean, we were trying to make a pattern book.
Yeah, yourselves,
typology.
yes, exactly, which is very pragmatic.
And use repetition as a way to bring down costs.
Yeah.
So we're hoping that the bespoke comes across on the corners where things stop and start, and where people can get more engaged in creating the face of the neighbourhood, whilst the actual terraces can just do their terracey thing and hold a lot of the neighbourhood together, but don't all need to shout individually.
Yeah. I remember way back in the 90s when I spent a lot of time in the Netherlands, going, for example, to look at Macrina Lavington's housing projects in Rotterdam and learning more about the way the Dutch planners dealt with these things at that time, where there was a lot more money around in the development world. It's a bit tougher now in the Netherlands too. And a lot of people would say to me, well, you know, we do feel quite comfortable with more communal ways of living without, you know, too many fences and so on. So I think there is still this pressure to overcome prejudices about people. I mean, the Englishman's home is his castle, for example.
Do you think, it's okay for some people who
the Phoenix is such a brilliant example because it brings regenerative design together with less defended types of housing developments. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that some people really do want to have their very privatised back garden.
Yes,
and I think
indeed,
that is fine. But I think that a lot of people are looking forward to something a bit more chatty and open and friendly. I mean, there is nothing meaner than a closely bordered fence.
Yeah, and they could indeed have that if there was a much wider rollout of retrofits locally, because, you know, all those relatively affordable, it's all relative, the homes that you pointed out, if they were all retrofitted, then people would have more affordable homes and have a slightly more private back garden or front garden, because that comes with that type of terrace house typology.
Sometimes the fences are quite low in those places as well.
I mean, there's such a variety.
Yeah.
So I'm really keen to open it up to the floor and get some questions. There's somebody here with a hand up.
That's such a great presentation. Thank you so much, Cany.
Oh,
can you hear me? I think it's
we're
quite
using,
small space.
we're using
Use
mics.
the mic for the recording.
Oh, for the
using mics,
recording,
isn't it?
of course.
Yeah.
Right, right. Okay, hello. Hello. Such a brilliant presentation, thank you. And I love the projects in Seaham and Dover. And I wondered if you had approached whether Taylor Wimpey or the developers who got planning for the Dover one, or the councils with your alternatives.
That's a good question. I mean, we did these we did these over the last few days. So the idea of density design drills and profitable neighbourhoods is that we're self-initiating, but it's affordable to do because of our kind of cheeky kind of screenshots and tools and arguments that hopefully. Well, we started thinking about this last year and we made a website with some arguments that took us quite a long time to piece together, because we just knew that something was not right in the kingdom, but we hadn't got a sequential story together, and hopefully we more or less have now. But what we now need is a lot of evidence, and we've we've realised that that doesn't come from just doing masses of free work, even if developers wanted to throw their sites at us. It probably comes from self-initiated research, like action research. I think they called it in the 70s, where you just, if we do 100 Dovers and Siams, then at the end we're going to be building a way of doing things which is quite expert on its own terms and creates a real alternative to. But thank you for saying that. It's very nice.
Any more questions? Oh, please, hand on the mic when you're finished.
Thanks. Yeah, brilliant presentation again. And I was going to ask the same questions as the speaker before, but also moving on from that. Yes, the developers, you need to get a Taylor Woodrow going and back them up in a corner, but you know, they'll always have a lot of reasons that, well, we just do the standard stuff. But more important question is, how do you get this into and accepted by local authorities? And Angela Rayner, do you have her on speed dial, please? Because we're about to get a huge number of greyfield, brownfield, purple field, whatever they want to call them, sites available, hopefully with, and they say they will have good location. And I think one of the problems that you've shown with your CM one is Taylor Woodrow have been given planning permission for 1,500 homes that do not have sustainable public transport. Now that is not permitted as part of the NPPF, and local authorities just don't seem to pay any attention to it. They just cheerfully give more permissions for car-based and car-dominated developments. So I think, A, there's a huge challenge to get to local authorities to start demanding this type of thing, and secondly, the politicians, local politicians, I always a complete lost cause really. So it's got to be central government and then feeding it through Homes England, which you know you've identified as picking up all the sites. So what's your plan?
Well, Amy Burbridge from Homes England, head of design at Homes England, came to the density design drills on her bike, and she's great. But I think that, you know, it's a big organisation and there's a kind of like institutional inertia in these things where, you know, what's been done is sensible because it's always been done. And I did actually look at the Taylor Wimpey reserved matters this afternoon, and sort of 10-page on their first phase, and they brush over. The affordable housing is in another phase sometime, and it's almost a challenge to a local authority that's strapped for time to just read through those documents. It looks at the planning history and it goes on for pages of links. And I know that you're an expert in that field and have to battle with those things, but it sometimes feels as if the blindingly obvious, the kind of the British sort of common sense approach is, if one can get a positive propaganda on alternative forms of development, that might do a lot. Because I don't actually think that Angela Rayner is going to be free to fund 100 alternative developments, because they would have announced that by now, don't you think? I think it's...
No, but they can participate, and that's the Homes England are already seed funding things, and there's going to be Homes England sort of drip feed seed funding, and so, you know, making your type of approach, and even the simple thing like embedding the very first thing, must have sustainable public transport. They say that, and then...
But Homes England's seed money always goes into remediating the land and making roundabouts. Basically, that's it. I mean, this CM site is, it's got a kind of very overgrown fence all the way around it. You can't see into it. And I think it's the site to just the fields just to the side of it also huge. That's a huge area of land. And to be honest, they could have a CM garden village in the middle of CM. That's all they could choose to do. 1,500 homes just there. That would be great. There's 2 high streets as well, on either side, so it would tie everything together.
Yeah, of course. You're working with Human Nature, which in my view is the best developer in the whole country, Jonathan Smales. I mean, that model is just incredible, and people, others, commentators like Rowan Moore in The Observer have made the point that it's been very tough to get it to this stage, but you're one of the architectural teams. Do you think that they've got what it takes to actually roll out more schemes that put regenerative design in the forefront of this calibre?
I mean, they're
Or is it to do
really,
with the beauty of the site and it's just a
they're
good
really
one?
ambitious. They're
Yeah.
thinking at
Okay.
many levels. But I don't know whether, Jeremy, you could talk about this a bit, because you are the architect holding together
Working on the
in Human Nature, who's
Phoenix project.
not just the Phoenix, you're working on all of the strands. I was just saying, could you answer Lucy about whether Human Nature are just working on the Phoenix, or whether they've got other plans?
And Jeremy,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
in the Sakula team, are you?
No,
No, you're
he's our
representing.
client.
I'm
Sorry,
their
I beg your
client.
pardon, you're the client. Welcome.
And my task is to be a great client, I guess, by doing all the right things to help. I think that's really important. So, we are a developing company. Phoenix is our first project. It's quite a difficult site, actually. So, it has a lot of upfront infrastructure costs that we're going to have to bear, and a lot of Section 106 stuff we have to pay for. So, it's very challenging. So, it's not the only site we're looking at. We are looking at other sites in East Anglia, in the West Country, and the Midlands, because the point of what we're doing is to deliver sustainable lifestyles through development, not to do development which happens to be a bit sustainable.
Yeah.
So having an impact is really important. We have an impact officer to try and assess what we're doing. So we are looking at other sites which are earlier stages of feasibility and land acquisition to roll out this principle very much along the lines that Cany's talking about. Denser neighbourhoods are key. You made an interesting reference to the. I'm not going to answer the question. I'm going to talk about something completely annoying and different to the group we work with. But one of the key things I think about the density thing is that obviously it makes it more viable commercially, but it also makes it more viable as a place, which is a whole thesis that Cany is talking about. But it's also really interesting. We have quite a lot of challenges from the Highways Department and other groups who are very sceptical of the rebalancing the car use. And we had this working group in Lewis who are made up of local people who are experts, one of whom was a surveyor, and he loved our townscape. He loved the design, particularly of Parcel 1, which Cany designed, which we were all collaborating on. And so we love the density, the townscape and the form, but we're just not completely convinced about the modal shift, as we're calling it, and move away from car use to a degree. And we pointed out that you can't have one and the other. The whole point about this townscape quality is you have to rebalance and recalibrate to make the car less important, not unimportant, but less important, to get this wonderful townscape everybody wants. And so I think that's one of the key messages about the density, is it creates a whole series of different benefits which can become exponentially effective in terms of sustainability, quality of life, mental health, and making the place a good place to live, viability, all those things.
And the problem is that people, I think in this country, feel that you can always have your cake and eat it. People really believe that you can have a really nice place that's protected in a design code, and you can also have everybody gets the freedom of their cars, and it just I think it's a particularly English thing to be able to hold these two truths and not actually let one interrogate the other. I found that in a lot of consultations. Have you, when people talking about the car?
Yes, I mean, hence the great controversy over the low, the LINs, the low traffic neighbourhoods and so on, which people have got really, really upset about. In various
It's a kind of gentrifying
it's
thing.
kicking off in Bright Bristol at the moment, isn't it? Again, having died down. Are there any more questions, whether on any aspect of gentle or intelligent density or car use or? Yeah, there's two. I think it's the
Hi,
one
sorry, I just wanted to take up
closest
on
to
that
the mic.
point about what you think, if there's a kind of fundamentally a cultural shift that needs to take place in England. You said at the beginning of the talk you think things are in fact moving backwards a bit. We've got 1.5 million houses possibly being built. To what extent, how do you shift people's opinions about the centrality of the car? It's, as you say, it's not possible for everyone, it's not even desirable for everyone to have their own car parked outside. How do you shift that mindset, and is it, and how do you work with government to kind of, and do you think there's any appetite in government to really kind of fundamentally change people's view and lay out what is necessary to make these houses more sustainable, more attractive, and more viable? And at the base of that, as well as good design, is removing the centrality of the car. Do you think there's any prospect of making a big leap forward and making these 1.5 million houses fundamentally better than the stuff that has been built for decades in this country and has just seemed to fail?
I mean, there's a lot of questions in what you just said. As I said, it's like hugely complex, and the biggest thing the government could do, and should have done years and years ago, is put VAT on new build and take it off retrofit. I mean, it's a kind of like something you talk to people from another country and they don't understand. It's such an odd thing, but it's basically it's putting the money in the hands of larger companies, and that the people who would spend their weekends retrofitting and buying their insulation and things, they're buying it at retail prices as well. So the whole landscape is skewed in the wrong way. Then once you've got people being able to regenerate from the inside their towns, then all sorts of micro densifications are possible, which allows those places to become revived. I think that the Thatcher putting shopping centres out of town drove this car culture, and we just got to work our way back. But I'm feeling now that the best thing to do is to do it by example and not to expect central government to make a big move, because they haven't got the confidence to do it, I don't think. That's the truth.
We've got a whole host. So there's a man here, and then the woman behind, and then there's somebody here who put their hand up earlier. Oh, two, I think, actually. We go that way. And sorry, yes, and another one here too. Yeah.
Ultimately, it will be successful if people want to buy them, that the market supports the idea of what you're putting forward and that they see value in it, both in lifestyle and financially. What sort of testing or what sort of feedback have you got on that? I mean, developers will follow the money once that's in place.
Are you saying what's the curb appeal of a stacked?
Yeah,
duplex like this?
why would I buy that over a Whitby home or whatever you call it?
Right. Good question.
Because I'm the client for that project, we are planning to use Cany's designed for, actually that was designed for Parcel 1, as we call it, for this project as a market leader. We have huge amounts of demand already. We haven't even quite signed the Section 106 yet. So we believe that this will sell and it will demonstrate very high values on that site. And we're going to use it as an exemplar for that site in terms of our value proposition, our foreign marketing campaign, and to demonstrate what can be done for other projects. So I think we have a phrase which has to be seen to be believed. I think once you build an example, people will come. Not everybody will want it, but enough people will want it to drive the market, we believe.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Lee. We've got this wonderful holistic design in front of us, and I'm thinking of local authority silos and the value you are adding not only to the developer's bottom line, but to health, well-being, to social cohesion, to inclusive economy, all of those. Are you having any traction having those conversations with the local authorities that you're dealing with? And it seems like that's a bit of ground research that would be really exciting next.
I think we've always had a good ride through planning. Like for instance, in this very bijou village called Southwold, we built 34 homes in a little backland site where there'd been an old brewery shed. And we got, even though there was like 50 party wall notices to do, there were no objections at planning, which is pretty amazing for a village. And I think it's to do with telling the story, selling the benefits, doing some really proactive, positive propaganda on the value of development. And I think often what happens is that people delegate that job to engagement specialists who try and make as little noise as possible. And that just sows a sort of feeling of distrust. And we do need, I mean, the government, central government is saying we need to get lots more local support. And I think to do that, we need to get our tools as proactive developers, say we're architects or whoever we are, they have to be appealing, lively, shared in an instant in a bar. They have to tell their story in a really sophisticated way, which and if you can't tell that story, then maybe you need to change the design kind of thing. But I am interested in the fact that not everybody can buy these homes, and we have got a gap to fill. And we started thinking about profitable neighbourhoods as a build-to-rent proposition, because the build-to-rent money is pouring into single-family homes at the moment. They've built enough kind of student flats and young professional co-living in Manchester and London, and now they're kind of looking for fresh territory. And we just feel really ambiguous about it, because it's clear that not everybody can get a mortgage to buy a house, that shared ownership is a bit of a cheat. And so can we develop governance and financial mechanisms which can make build to rent a good story for people? I think there's a lot of, that's where the research I feel needs to happen. How can we make it inclusive?
Next question. Well, there were a couple in the middle. Mike, would you mind holding on just a minute, because there are a couple in the middle, and then we'll come back to you, I promise.
Thank you, that's really interesting. I'm definitely sold on denser property myself, because I've seen, seems to be a thing of, a lot of my friends my age moving further out to get this house, which is, I think, just a dream, because they might, I don't think any of them are living in Taylor Wimpey houses, but I think they're moving out because of this idea of having more space. But I feel like I have better quality of life, not having to get the tube all the time. And it's, really interesting to think about how much of it is based on an idea of, well, this is just what we do. We get to this age and we buy a house like that. And I wondered, when you said about your Newcastle properties, you've had good feedback about that. Do you have information about the ages and the professions or the people that are moving in? Because it would be interesting to try and understand whether the people initially buying are buying thinking of a first home and still got that kind of idea of one day we'll have the white picket fence or whatever it is.
So you're talking about the one that we built in Newcastle in Newsbury?
Yeah.
We do actually know quite a lot about that, because we went and did a website that you can look at called People of the Mailings, .co.uk, and it's is it .com? I think it's .co.uk, and you can hear them talking about their homes, and our favourite one is them arguing. There's this couple saying, "I think this place stopped us arguing," and then they start arguing about whether it did or not. but there is definitely a feeling in the Usburn that people who are living in those apartments come houses feel lucky because they are part of a very strong community. So yeah, that's partly to do with the Usburn, of course. The place is amazing. The people who chose to move in don't mind the fact that there's a car crushing plant right next to it with a screeching gantry going across, and they say it makes them feel that they're part of a productive landscape, and they're not looking for the monoculture. They've all decided to live there because it's like.
Okay, there were a couple behind you. If we work our way back to Mike Tonkin at the back. Thanks.
Mine's just a sort of short question. I work for a manufacturer that does intercoms and stuff, so we're always dealing with blocks of flats. Why, if one of the goals is density, why 2 homes per footprint, if you like? Why not 3? Was there some sort of calculus into this is the right sort of scale? Is it for a particular type of audience, a type of price point or something? Why stop at 2 per footprint, as it were?
Well, we do have the triplets as well. I suppose we were thinking about a house which is 6.2 metres wide, and once you've taken a staircase out of it and an entrance, then you've got the right amount of space for a living space. But of course, gallery access is almost the next thing that you would go for. We thought we like the idea of a street with lots of doors, because doors create interaction.
A couple of questions behind you. I think just take it back to whoever's waving vigorously. There's about 2 or 3, I think, there.
Hi. So I have a more hypothetical question. We're architecture students, and we have a brief to do with residential housing in central London, and we really find this interesting about building culture through denser living. I was wondering, what principles would you apply from this to a single building, perhaps like a single block of flats, sort of what would your methodology be when trying to create a community, but instead of it being horizontal, it would be vertical, and how would you sort of approach it sustainably as well? Because I see in your street design it looks very biodiverse and very eco-conscious, and I would just like to hear your thoughts on that.
Can I do something cheeky and get you to pass the microphone to Nicholas behind you, who is going to ask a question? Because he's the one who can answer this question probably best. We did a competition together for Newham for the caravanserai way back in 2011, which we built. And your whole way of working is to create community in all of your projects. So maybe you're best to answer that.
Oh wow! I was really not ready to. I'm sorry. I don't think I'm.
Okay, no, you ask your question. Sorry.
Mindset set to just jump on and then be able to respond to your question.
Okay.
Maybe after a glass of beer.
That sounds great. Yeah.
No, what you showed, your proposal. I think did you think about cooperative development as well? Or multi-family development. This example that an example of this kind of development in Germany or different countries where suddenly a couple of families comes together and develop one block of flat to their needs, and that could include a business as well, or collective utilities. And have you thought to integrate?
Another project that we
as a
did
part
in
of the-
2015 was called Collective Custom Build, and we were looking at just the models from Austria and Germany, where 30 families get together. They put their money together so that they can buy land and develop at wholesale prices rather than being, treated as just, the punters at the end of the game. And that way, there is a lot. It's just not happening a lot in the UK. It's actually, there's a few examples, and they're the same examples as they were like 10 years ago. So I guess it would be great if there was more green banks and more access to funding, and that people could self-develop more in groups. We would think that was the best. But I suppose the terraced house model is something which is stringy, and it fits into lots of different sites, and we're trying to create these kind of streetscapes which would be like the a different form of communal space where things can happen somebody can make their living room into a shop, that there's these opportunities to manipulate the whole neighbourhood in a way that I feel that blocks of flats, they become a bit hidebound in their service charges and their rules and things. This feels perhaps more free.
Okay, there's a couple more questions. This guy here. Yes.
Hello, just two really quick questions from me. The first one's kind of, what is the lifespan kind of expected on these buildings? Are you, planning them to last the next 20 years, 50 years? Kind of what is your mindset in kind of, you've got sustainability for now, but what's it going to hold in 50 years' time?
Well, it's going to be like always a movable target, isn't it? But at least 100 years. How can one build anything for less than that? A lot of us live in homes that are that old. A lot of the housing stock is going to be that old. So.
And the second question is more kind of related to, like, as a student, just to kind of someone who's in the industry. I just wanted to quickly ask kind of, what was your design process almost? How did you kind of create the building blocks and put them piece by piece to get to the project that you kind of have now? And kind of what advice would you give us as students, kind of the next generation of hopefully architects?
Can I show you on the iPad upstairs when we have a drink?
Yes, of course.
Okay, that would be Mike, were you going to ask something?
Yes, and then I think the final question will be Mike. So fire away.
Cany, for a thought-provoking and beautiful presentation. And I've convinced us all through your arguments about density and building in existing situations. I was watching New Question Time last Thursday, and it was in somewhere like Welwyn Garden City, and everybody was up in arms because people were going to be building in their town. And the main complaint was not so much against having more people in the town, but it was more about what the town didn't have the services to provide. So is there a way you can make your model profitable for the neighbourhoods around the development, or profitable for the whole town that it's in, by incorporating some of those things, bigger GP services, better transportation? Are there things you can see that you could do to your model that would win over not just the people who are going to buy the houses, but those who are going to live around them?
Well, probably didn't spend enough time showing those threads, say and see them. I think that very often you get high streets which are struggling, even GPs that are, have too few patients and things. So it's when you put something in the middle of those services, it's a two-way street. You're supporting the vibrancy of everything that happens in the town. You're especially if you're not in a car, you're spending money in a different way. You're as you say, getting sick, going to the GP. So it's like old communities need new communities, and new communities need old communities. It's like that.
Okay, right. Well, Cany, it was amazing. What did I say in my LinkedIn post? I think I started it by making a joke, let's get Cany about housing. Because I can't think of any other architect that I and indeed your whole practice, it seems to be many of the representatives are here, who has so consistently over all the time I've known you, which is a long time, grappled with these issues, I mean, and also gentle, intelligent density is part of it. So I mean, housing is social infrastructure, it's one of the country's biggest challenges, and yet so is, holistic, the making of holistic neighbourhoods, rather than being forced down purely the developer route.
Do you think we can get people to stop talking about homes as if they're products, or calling them products?
Well, the mass house builders are going to carry on trying to do that, but
I think that would be great, because that word wasn't used till about 2005.
yeah, it's
for
because
homes.
housing market's financialised, but
Yeah.
I mean, if we can,
It's more than an asset class, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, I do think, and you would be, obviously, you're a very good person, and people did refer to, is Angela Rayner on your speed dial? But these politicians who are putting forward, Labour government ministers, who are putting forward these proposals like having clusters by railway stations and so on. It's got to be mixed use and it's got to be regenerative. So all of your building blocks are paving the way. So
Thank you for inviting me.
congratulations.